Hey, everybody. I hope life is good wherever you are today. Man, I can't believe it's February 22nd already, but at least it's a leap year, right? So it gives us one extra day to get ready for the Easter holidays. And what it means really is we have 5 weeks and one day to Easter. And so that's not many days. I'm looking forward to our Good Friday services. I'm looking forward to our Easter services. And today this is the title that we chose to use, a 30-day plan to increase guests who come on our campus this Easter. And it's going to be very, very practical. Easter's actually, I think, 38 days from right now. And you're going to be able to implement what we talk about today, regardless of church size. And honestly, we're not just going to do this today, but normally I love having pastors from other churches on here with me. And we're going to do that whenever we get past Easter. But for the next 3 weeks, Mike and I are going to share everything we possibly can to help stimulate visitor flow in your region of the world towards your church between now and Easter. So we determined that'll probably take us about 3 webinars. So we decided just to do 3 webinars, and we're going to be at the 20,000 foot level this week. And then next week, I'm going to give you some really practical things that you can do in those 3 weeks leading up to Easter to have more people come and experience the great things God's doing in your church. Don't think that this is about size, because I started with 80 families, and we're going to be talking about things that we did when we had 80 families back in the day. But Mike, our staff has been preparing now for a good month, really, for Easter, maybe 6 weeks. And now when March 3rd hits, we'll start preparing the congregation to be a part of what we're getting ready to do. And of course, you're our creative pastor, so you have a ton going on right now. And as a pastor and a grandpa uh, and a dad, I admire how you're intentionally investing your time so that all those parts of your life are staying good.
Yes, it's a big season for sure. And it's true, every time of the year, but especially this time of year, that intentionality, I like that word you use. That's key, because as anyone watching knows, it's not hard to fill our calendars when you do what we do. So if we don't dictate what our time's going to go to, it'll go somewhere, right? So yeah, I try to be intentional, and I know many of you guys try to do the same. And like you said, not only intentional about ministry, which is obviously so important, but not even just the different teams we lead, but also intentional with family, intentional with personal time and personal spiritual health, even fun, the things that we do, because those things can either give us life and refresh us, or they can add stress to our life if we don't manage them well, right? And so, yeah, in order to continue showing up and giving, we want to make sure we're filling ourselves up so that we have stuff to give. So yeah, intentionality is the name of the game, and it's ramping up here for sure. But it's going to be a great Easter, and I look forward to talking about Easter for the next few webinars, because we have a great opportunity to reach people.
Yeah, one of the reasons I love having you on is that you are the creative pastor, and but also you've been in the church for over 30 years. So your mom and I have pastored this church 34, going to be 35 years. Next anniversary we celebrate. And you were gone a couple of years. You went to ORU to play baseball and to get your degree, but then you felt Coach Poole came, tried to recruit you to come home, and you came home, and then our worship leader left. So you've been in the middle of the mix this entire time. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the thoughts that you have today. Before we get started, do you want to go ahead and welcome our new members and do our partner shout out?
Yeah, let's do it. So they're going to put the members up. Welcome to all of you guys. We're so thankful that you've chosen to jump in on the SCN train, to be part of the SCN family. Welcome to Timothy Brown from New El Bethel Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. Welcome to Thomas Berrien from First United Presbyterian Church in Silver Creek, New York. Rick Craig, Crossroads Christian Church in Vacaville, California. Justin Daniel from Blountville Christian Church in Blountville, Tennessee. Ricky Danielle from Corydon Missionary Baptist Church in Corydon, Kentucky. Eric Hamp from Faith and Family in Euless, Texas. James Horvath from Calvary Lighthouse Church in Rochelle, Illinois. Chris Maxwell from Goldmine Church in Royston, Georgia. Jason Spade from First Baptist Church of Princeton, West Virginia, in Princeton, West Virginia. Avery Varnador from Lighthouse Baptist Church in Welcome, North Carolina. That's a cool name. John Korkadakis from Village Green Community Church in London, Canada. Javed Iqbal from Herman Church and Ministries of Pakistan. Charles L. Joshua from the Master's Vineyard Ministry in South Sudan. And Kenny Shonda from House of Peace Christian Church in Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome, guys. We are so honored and thankful to have you part of the network and look forward to being able to serve you in any way that we can.
Yeah, that's good. Then you have a partner shout out today, Mike?
Yes, we do. We have a good partner shout out. We just saw this guy. If you were at the retreat, you probably got to spend a little bit of time with him. Just an awesome guy. His name is Pastor Michael Perotti from 7 I.M. Church in Mineola, Kansas. He is in Mineola, and man, it's just amazing to hear what God is doing through them there in Mineola. Mineola is only a town of about 800 people, but they now have 200 people going to their church, so they are really impacting that community, and it's growing. He was telling me they're having to add services and they're having to do a lot of things because that community hasn't really seen church, like this, like what's happening there, and it's really cool to hear and to hear his vision and heart for Kansas. Pastor Jason Swan is there as well, not too far up the road from Pastor Michael, and they're doing just such a great work in Kansas. So we're proud of you, Pastor Michael. Thankful that you've connected to Significant Church, and we get to celebrate what God's doing through you guys. This was his second time coming to the retreat, and I always love getting to talk to him and just hear the passion in his heart for his city and his state.
Yeah, that's good. Man, I want to jump in today because I'm pumped up about just sharing how to increase visitor flow in your church. And today we're going to talk about what? We're going to talk about 3 ways to do it. And then next week we'll talk about how. And we'll give you a number of things. And next week will be really about increasing visitor flow all the time. Because, Mike, this may shock guys, but according to Tom Rayner, churches lose 33% of their attendance every year. So if you don't become good at developing a system that causes visitors to continually populate your church, that's going to hurt you. And I'm not saying all of our churches have that same percentage, but next week I'll actually give everybody how you break down that 33%, that if you have 100 people, here's how you lose 33 as part of the national average. And when we do that, we'll all see, yeah, I do lose people, according to all these ways that they describe. But keeping your church one where there's a culture of invitation and a high visitor flow. If you want to change a lot of lives, if you want to impact a city, it's so important. So going into Easter, there's 3 ways that we do it. And I'm going to say them first, and then we'll come back and we'll deal with each one of them. But the first thing we do is we help our church members fulfill their call. Then number 2, we develop ways to care and connect for our community. So if anybody's thinking about going to church, which they are, Easter's the most attended service in our part of the world. Some places Christmas Eve is, but for us, it's Easter. So we help each church member fulfill their call. We develop ways to care and connect with our community that gives, to me, the coolest kind of advertising that you can have, which is just they're caring, life-giving people out there. Then the third thing we do is we do a creative production that draws the community. Now, I'm not talking about a big play. So if you're thinking that way, don't even think that way. Well, we talk about something you can implement if you have 200 people, 300 people, 100 people. You can implement what we're getting ready to talk about in a minute, because it's not putting on some huge production. Those are difficult. We've done them and they're good, but you don't have to put on a big production to significantly increase your visitor flow at Easter. But the first thing that I think is really important is that you start with the call of your members when you think about how you're reaching out. And you say, why is that so important? Well, because God has given each one of our members a promise in Acts 16:31. And that promise is, if we will believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, he will save us and our household. So we shouldn't be surprised that 90% of people who come to Christ do so because of a family member. God's made a promise that if our members do certain things, then the result's going to be that their relational circles begin to grow with people who have embraced the gospel. And so the first thing, and to me, this is a year-round thing. There was a time whenever churches grew by offering certain distinctives. And for us, right off the bat in 1990, we were really careful that we didn't develop the kind of church where our distinctive was something that they didn't want to bring their family or guests to. Now, you guys my age, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of the younger guys, you may not know what I'm talking about. But I want to see our church add so much value to our people's lives that their relatives see the value that we've added to their life, and they come and check us out because of that. I know just the other day I was out in town, and one guy said, "Hey, Pastor Jim," I had no idea who he was. He said, "Hey, my son and my daughter-in-law started coming to y'all's church." And he said, "I just want to tell you, I don't even think the family relations between the daughter-in-law and us would be good. But because of your church and because of relational things I've seen her change and do," he said, "Man, I love your church." And he's in a old line denominational church somewhere. But there's another guy who's the best friend of that couple that, man, since he came, his parents come now, his sister comes now. And the biggest, that when we think about bringing guests, the stickiest guest per se that we're going to bring are.
Oh, I think we lost him for a moment there. Um, yeah, I'm sure they're going to get that figured out real quick. I'm just going to continue on a little bit of what he was talking about there, and then when he jumps back on. But yeah, it's so true that the people, I mean, there's no better testimony, there's no better invite than when you see it in the life of somebody that you know. And so I was thinking about a guy that I know that is around my age, that I remember him when we were young, like in the young adult ministry and things like that. And he kind of got away for a while, and he just recently started getting back, and he has like 5 kids. He has a lot of kids, and he started kind of getting back around church. They started loving the Next Gen kids ministry and those kinds of things, and his life is just slowly but surely, like, you can see God's working in his life. And he started telling me not long ago, just pray for my mom. I've been wanting her to get into church and to experience what I'm experiencing. And now I just started to see his mom start coming to church. And now I'm starting to see, even his kids, I hear that they're bringing friends from school to church. It's awesome how that can happen. And it just makes such a difference when you see someone who's connected, like Pastor Jim's talking about, and you see that play out in their life. And what an impact that can make. So, well, I don't want to jump too far ahead because I know Pastor Jim has some good stuff that he wanted to share. So, anyway, I guess I can move forward with it a little bit. I wish I knew if they were having some technical difficulties. I wish I could help them out. But all right, so that's the importance of connection, right? And I think we all understand that, we all know that, but it's so true. And when we build a culture of invitation, when people take ownership for connecting and bringing people in and sharing what God's doing in their life, it makes such a difference, and it helps bring people to Jesus. So here's some things that we do to increase our guests at Easter. I'm going to jump in a little bit to Pastor Jim's outline here, and once he gets back on, I'll let him pick it back up. There it is. It looks like he's trying to get in. We'll let him in. Can we go ahead and let him in, guys? Does it look like he's... All right, are we connecting? All right. Well, let me go ahead and share point number 1 while they're getting that figured out. We're going to talk about how to increase guests at Easter. We talked about the connection side of it. Here's the first one. Help each church member fulfill their call. Help each church member fulfill their call. What is the call? Well, Acts 16:31 says, believe in the Lord Jesus and you will be saved, you and your household. Hey, there he is. I was stealing your material. I was just sharing it. I hope you don't mind. I went forward a little bit.
My goodness, Mike. Oh, wait a minute. What happened?
I think you're back on.
I am back on, but I'm not back on the way I was. Hold on.
I was just telling a little story about a guy that I know that started coming back to church several months ago and seeing the impact that it's had on him and his kids. And he was sharing with me to be praying for his mom. And now I'm starting to see his mom back in church, starting to hear about his kids, inviting kids from school to church, and just how that testimony, when you see the impact that Jesus can have in someone's life that you know, man, that what great way to inspire people to want to get into church and hear the gospel.
Yeah, that's the truth. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm sorry about that, guys. I had some interviews, and my computer was lower than I thought, so I had to plug in. It was totally my bad. So anyway, the first way, Mike, we talked about was that you help people fulfill a call. And we're in a
Yeah.
smaller city, but the visitor flow that's going to be the stickiest is those that are connected to families. So we want to totally be a place that helps people reach their family. We want our families to be proud of what we do whenever we go into Easter. Did you want to say anything more about that? I know I missed it.
No, I think I pretty much said what I was going to say. So,
Okay, that's good. Well, the
yeah.
second thing that we do is, in addition to that, we do community outreaches. Why don't you talk about some of the community outreaches we're doing this year?
Some of the community outreaches. Yeah, we are. I'm sorry, I'm going to jump down to. Did we talk about? I'm sorry, Dad. Did we talk about? Did we talk about like the March series or any of that stuff, or do you want to go back and talk about some of that here in a little bit?
Yeah, am I on, Mike?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay,
think you're on.
good. Okay,
I think we're
good.
going to talk about March series a little bit and
Yeah,
invite
we
you
can.
back to
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Or
So our March series is the Jesus You May Not Know. So it just gives us a chance when we get into March and we do a series, we almost always do it in a way where it's not felt need. You know, we started the year talking about how strengthening people's walk with God. And then this last month, we were strengthening their family. So our March series is going to be a lot about Jesus and why he's so important to us, to our families, to our world. And so it's definitely going to be strengthening what we talk about doing. And we have a culture of invitation here, which means that we say regularly that in the course of the year, we want you to believe for 2 to 3 people in your relational circle to come to a series. So every time we start a series, we develop that culture of invitation, but we ramp it up whenever it's Easter.
yeah, absolutely. And sometimes we'll do little projects. So this year, like you said, we're doing the Jesus we may not know, you may not know. And the idea is that a lot of people have a basic understanding of who Jesus is, or maybe they have a completely wrong understanding, right? Based on how he's been represented by, Christians sometimes, by church, by culture, whatever it is. But there's so much about Jesus that people don't know, what he taught, what he stood for. People may not be aware of. So our hope is that this series cuts through the noise, and it's one of those that I think can appeal to believers. I think some perspectives will be challenged as well as unbelievers, which I think we feel can be a good thing at Easter. But we do ramp up the culture of invitation. It's something that you've instilled as long as I can remember in our church. And do you want me to talk a little bit about like invite card? Or that we're trying something new this year with the invite your peeps?
Yeah, you can do that. But let me do something quick because I am an evangelist by nature, and we see, a couple thousand people in a year come to Christ in our services, which to scale that, it would just be the size of your church is coming to Christ in our church every year,
Yeah.
the adult services. And that only happens if you keep a culture of invitation strong. And then if you count children and youth, you double that within our church. And it's not easy to assimilate people and to turn them into fully devoted disciples. And we're working on all that. But the thing that I'd say is that when the people feel when it becomes a priority to them to constantly be reaching out to people who aren't in church and to work hard to invite them, it shows up. And
Mm.
so I just share different scriptures like John 20, where it talks about how Jesus came into the upper room and they had the doors locked for fear of the Jews. And Jesus did 3 things. First of all, he reminded them this message was true. Hey, peace, I'm here. I fulfill prophecy. This is true. So let's not treat it like a little fairy tale that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
How people receive my salvation is playing out in big ways. And then he showed him his hands and his side. And
Mm.
what he was doing there was he was saying, it says they were overjoyed, and he helped them see, I'm glad you're overjoyed, but I need you to have compassion because as the
Right.
Father sent me into the world, so I'm sending you in the world. And then he made a statement that was so amazing. He breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. And then he said, if you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. But if you don't, they aren't. And I was raised Catholic. And this doesn't mean that the priest can either forgive your sins or not. This means that people are forgiven of sin to the degree that the church has a passion to see them forgiven of sin.
Mm.
So a lot of times I think the reason that churches don't see guests is they go to technique and it's real transactional. But the number one thing, and I'm so sorry my computer went out and this webinar got affected maybe a little bit by that. But the number one thing is getting our people to care deeply for their relational circles. Because
Yeah.
when that happens, visitor flows. If they're life giving, if your church is life giving, and if they care about the people in their relational circles, that's the number one thing to start and to develop an atmosphere where you attract more guests.
Yeah, that's good. And we do things to give them tools to do that, right? To invite people. But yeah,
Yeah.
we know that studies show that most people will respond positively, if they're invited by someone they know and they trust. And these tools give people an easy way to invite their friends, families, coworkers, whoever. But one thing that, like I was saying earlier, one thing I've seen you be intentional about from as long as I can remember, is instilling a culture of invitation, a culture of bringers, a culture of inviters. Went back to Luke 14. I remember you sharing that with the church in the early days that you'll make sure that we're ready to feed and minister to people, but it's the job of all of us to fill God's house with hungry people. And so, yeah, Faith Family, I've just seen that be such an important part of who we are. People bring people to church, people invite people, and we try to be a place that they can trust that it's going to be a good experience and they're going to hear the gospel. So a few things we do that I just practically, we do invite cards. I know a lot of people do them, just little business card type things with the series that we're in and a little explanation of what the series is about and service times on it. But just an easy way, if you've talked to a buddy or someone who's struggling with family or relationships. We're in a series now, Family Matters, an easy way to say, hey, my church is doing this, may be of interest to you. And just an easy way to invite people. I've seen people who have businesses and stuff, they'll put them by the cash register just in case it could minister to somebody. And just an easy tool to be able to invite people. You don't have to sit there and explain every single thing to them. It's all right there on the card, and you can just give it to them and say, hey, thought this might be interesting to you. And another thing we're trying this year, we've done all kinds of things, right? We've done door hangers and different things. But like you said, Dad, we like it to be in the relational circle. I think it means a lot more when it's coming from someone in your relational circle than a random person just inviting you to come check it out. Not that there's anything bad about that, but it's just going to hit differently. And so we're doing something called Invite Your Peeps this year. We'll see how it goes. It'll be fun though. And the idea is we're just going to have invitations to church, kind of explain Easter, but we're like, hey, we're also going to have some peeps. So if nothing else, people get candy out of it and they'll like you for that. So you get your invite and you attach it to the peeps and it's a little Easter, hey, got you some candy and here's some stuff going on at church. And just encourage people to invite their friends that way, invite their anything that you can do creatively, but mostly any way we can resource people to make it easy to remove barriers from them being able to invite people to church, and to motivate them to do that. So those are a couple of things we do.
Yeah,
We'll
so let
see
me
how it
just say
goes.
something, Mike, I think is super, super important. And that is when we talk about developing the spirit of this, you may think, well, people are going to invite their people. Well, I'm going to share something this is from the National Sales Association. They have done stats that the average person in sales doesn't do more than a initial visit. So they offer one time. And then
Wow.
some people do a follow-up visit, but the vast majority, I don't have the stats in front of me, like 85% only do it like once or twice. But in terms of closing a sale, probably 90% of sales get closed after the third time that you reach out and try to tell
Wow.
somebody what you're doing. So churches aren't, I mean, what I noticed in our city was people when they get invited a lot, finally they'll say, well, hey, I'll come once just so they'll quit inviting me, right? And then they come and it go, like our city manager came and said, my goodness, I had no idea this church was doing all this. I had no idea these services were so good. So that's why it's so important. We start with that culture of invitation. Now, the
Yeah.
second thing we're going to talk about is you develop ways to care for your community. And it can be the juvenile detention centers. It can be what social agencies are doing in your town. But now what you're doing is people are seeing they're not just about their church. So for us, it started with our family members, but then it went to service in the community. And we tell our leaders that we want to do these outreaches through you. And we
Yeah.
want you to keep it simple, keep the outreach simple. And we let our leaders begin to dream, and we finance things that and not big things, but we just put tools in their hands that cause them to be a blessing to other people. And so when we have a lot more people at Easter, we know it's going to be because our people invited their family members. And number
Right.
two, there were people in the community who may only go to church at Easter or whatever, but they're going to think about us first because of the fact we're out there loving people.
Right. That's right. That's right. And this year we're doing it, we're doing it, we've done it different ways and we've seen success different ways, but this year I know just practically you kind of wanted to do it to where we made sure it didn't feel siloed, right? Like outreach is just something that's a part of the outreach department or the people who care about that stuff. You've invited us to really invite our dream teams to be a part of reaching the community together this year, which I'm looking forward to because it furthers that culture throughout the entire church of invitation and of service, right, to our community. So our dream teams are all owning different outreaches throughout our community, things like restoring homes, cutting lawn, doing yard work, stuff that, most people can do, painting, helping the needy, those kinds of things. But we're doing them together in a really cool way, I think. And we're going to be serving with people we have relationship with, community with, and just being reminded that there's so much more going on than just what we're part of in our team, right? Like it's so much more than just that job that you do on Sunday or whatever it is, but it's about serving our community as well and reaching out and helping bring people in. So yeah,
Yeah. So
looking forward to that.
this year, and one of the things that our church doesn't even know about yet, but they're going to be so excited. A lady who was a school teacher for a long, long time and taught you guys, been a great church member for 30 years. Her husband has cancer. She was actually blind and the Lord healed her. God restored her
Mm.
sight. And but
Yeah.
they're just so burdened with his cancer and their little house. They don't have money. So there's going to be a team that just goes and beautifies their house this year, heading into Easter. Now that does cost more money, but honestly, what we found is when we just started sharing it with some of our leaders, they're all given money, and half of what we need to do that has already come in that wouldn't have come in if that didn't happen. So
Right.
it's just one of those things that when you so love, and so many of our guys do this, like Joe Caminetti Sr. and John Newsom, they do an amazing job at this, and they've blessed me with watching what they do. But just to develop relationships in the community, and I think the best way is to start with some of your social organizations, some of your Christian social organizations. That's one good way because they'll have everything ready for you to clean up things, to do whatever. So you can start with your schools, your social agencies that can use help. But my favorite way is to start with our leaders and to meet with our leaders and say, hey, what areas do you guys have that you're passionate about reaching out in? Because a lot of times they'll have favor in that area, and if they have favor in that area, it helps them invite people to the Easter service.
Mhm. That's right. It opens hearts for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. So the third way, I guess, Mike, so if first of all, help everybody fulfill their call.
Hmm.
Number two, we uh, reach out to the community. And then the third way is that we plan creative programming that draws people at Easter. Now, you've been in the church since you've been 2 years old. Can you remember the first program we ever did?
The first thing I remember seeing pictures of was an egg hunt.
It's all we could afford, man.
Is that
And we
it?
felt like we
Yeah.
were breaking the bank to do an egg hunt. But I got pictures of you running with your little basket, And
Yeah.
so we had the 2-year-old division, and it was all separated. But man, we had all. I mean, we were packed. We were up in the balcony for the first time. It was exciting that first Easter, and it was as simple as saying that we're going to have an egg hunt, and
Yeah.
people inviting people who with kids to, hey, our church is going to have an egg hunt, and bam, it just got bigger. And so here's what I noticed: whether it's an egg hunt or whether it's a mini production that we're going to do, like let's just say you have some kind of choir, what happens is people come to see those people, and
Right.
that's how. So it just starts growing a crowd, and now it gives you the opportunity to speak to the family members of those people. So those are, again, we're going to get to some real specific kind of tools in the next webinar, but those are the three big areas that we think about whenever we're trying to stimulate visitor flow. And we use billboards, we do other things, but the most
Right.
important things that I feel like we do are, A, help our families fulfill their call. That mean I go to a great church and we're doing something Easter Sunday, and man, we'd love to have you come. That's the first
Right.
way. And then having the community say, Faith Family Church is always blessing the community.
Mhm.
So if you're always blessing the community, when it becomes Easter time, they're going to want to come. Then the third way is the more people you involve in the service, and you don't have to do a big production to involve people in the service. You know, for instance, we take all of our children's workers, and they don't all serve every single week. But when Easter comes, we get them all serving, because they'll do stations with different things that happen in the life of Jesus. And so now they're a part of producing the service with us. When it comes to the creative department, you can talk about it for just a minute, but you guys do a lot more things, and there are a lot more people involved on Easter Sunday.
Yes, for sure. And when you think about it, a lot of it is getting into people's worlds, like we can't just expect them to come into ours. So whether it's outreach, community stuff, whether it's reaching out to the people in your world, or whether it's involving people in services to kind of bridge that gap, it's getting into people's world. But yeah, we've tried a lot of things over the years, when it comes to service programming and special things that we've done, and a lot of it has worked. And some of it was great for a season and isn't now, and maybe it will be again one day. But I think, you know, what's important to note is that it's been about being on board with what God is doing, right? It's always being open and sensitive to what God wants to do. And so we've done egg hunts, we've done, children. We always have something special going on for the kids. That's always important, that there's something that people can bring their kids to. We've done Stations of the Cross, we've done musical dramas, which, those kind of things can create a lot of momentum. So you want to be prepared on how to,
Well, there's one time
capitalize
we
on
had
them.
8,000 people attend a musical drama, in a city of 60,000, that was 1 in 10 people were in the building, at least, for
Yeah,
that musical drama. But it was a lot of effort. And honestly, you got to be real careful, because all your people leading to make that happen, you can have some dissonance that occurs in the church.
right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of work, and sometimes people say, okay, what was really left? Early in the life of our church in the 1990s, we added a lot of people through musical dramas. I could see that wasn't happening as much later. So what we did was we changed it, and we started having a lot of little things that would stimulate visitor flow. And
Mm.
musical drama numbers are huge, but we still have really good numbers doing that.
Right. Yeah. So like this year, the whole season of March, the whole month of March, we're doing something to lead up to Easter. And that's kind of how we did it this year. Is we're gonna kind of climax at Easter, but we're gonna do something every week to help kind of take us there. And of course, our Good Friday service is a big service for us now every year. Um, but I think, the big thing is just being intentional about providing good opportunities for people who want to celebrate Jesus on Easter, right? And also good opportunities for kids and families, and then good opportunities for people who want to use Easter as an opportunity to invite people to hear the gospel. Like we want our people to have things to invite people to. We want our people to be able to know and trust that if they invite somebody, it's going to be a good experience, and they're going to both, experience the love and the truth of Jesus. And so, however we do that, that's always our goal.
Yeah, well, here's one thing I want to say too is, and you could do it a number of different ways, but we produce a video too that plays within our service that is just for the new person, you know,
Yeah,
because when somebody gets invited to your church, they're not going to just immediately know everything that could possibly bless them whenever they step
right.
through the doors. So we do a real fun but real informative video, and the feeling whenever that video is done in church is, oh, this is why this place is growing. They're doing all this for people. I know a lot of people. That's pretty cool. My kid, man, I think I want my kids to be in there. So that we found that kind of production is really, really important to put something in that causes people to realize why the church is really here for them. But I prepared something for everybody, Mike, before we start moving towards wrapping this up and take some questions. These are things that if we want our churches to grow, and if we want them to grow because they're changing lives, we have to excel at all six of these things. And
Mm.
getting our people to bring people are just one aspect, but you have to have empowering services. So the service has to be something that when the people leave, they're saying, man, if I was getting this kind of input every week, it would bless my life. Then your
Yeah,
people have to be bringers. And you referenced this earlier, but when I first started pastoring, we had nobody come to Christ in 6 weeks. And there's a good reason for that. There weren't any visitors. Our
hmm,
church was kind of a spiritually correct church that didn't like serve people as much as try to help people get their theology straight. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't actively trying to find the hurting. When we switched and they saw that their role, according to Luke 14, was to bring the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, those that don't have rich insight, those who've been crippled inside, those who don't have the strength to walk into God's will, and those who don't see the value of the gospel. When we asked the church to start bringing those people, we had 365 people saved the first year. And
yeah,
so now if the services weren't empowering, it wouldn't matter if they brought people. But if the services are empowering and you bring people, churches grow. And then the third thing is a good assimilation plan for visitors. And I can tell you this story that when we were first here, there was a lady who visited our church once, and she visited another church in town, and she happened to live across the street from me. So she met me at the mailbox and she said, man, I loved your service more, to be honest with you. But she said, no one ever got in touch with me. She said, when I filled out your visitor card, nobody ever even called. And she said, this other church called me 5 times. And so she went to the other church. Her name was Twyla Palmer. So I called in my head of the visitor program and I said, hey, this happened. What happened? And she said, oh, I got busy with stuff with my family, and I haven't done visitor calls for about 6 weeks. So I had 6 weeks, and this is one of our best members, 6 weeks
Ooh.
of no
Yeah,
contact whatsoever. Now, about 2 months later, this lady joined our church. She gave us a second chance. But that's why it's so important that you don't just stop at the bringing stage, but you think,
right.
is service going to be empowering? Are people going to bring people? Do I have a good assimilation plan in place? And then I just encourage you guys to make a way for people to make decisions and get baptized. We're actually going to be baptizing people in our Easter service. And it's just one way of letting people know lives are being changed here. Stories. And last time we put a story up of a guy, but we run stories like that before we baptize because the hearts of people should just be burning with, man, a new beginning is possible for me. So as we do these things, as we help our church members fulfill their calls, we reach out to the community, and as we put little extra production into it so that people are involved and people are coming just to watch them do what they do, we want to make sure that we've got a good plan for how we're going to connect with visitors afterwards, a way for people to make decisions and get baptized. And then after that, a way to help people take their first steps well. And it just blows me away. Mom and I both, we love going to the Experience God small group every week because we love hearing how people got here, why they're staying here, and it's just amazing. So you want to make sure there's something that they can immediately go to so they know they can grow. And then the last thing is you want to have a plan to connect people in good one another relationships. So just real quick, if I was doing a checklist and they could put it up again, but empowering services, people who are bringers, a good assimilation plan, a way for people to make decisions, get baptized, celebrate new life, a way that people know that there's going to be a first step class just for them. And then just start thinking about how you can connect them in one another relationships. Because if they don't get connected in one another relationships, what happens is they go back to whatever the culture of their life was before that Easter service. But if we can get them into next steps and into one another relationships, then we have somebody who's helping change the culture of their life. And that's how we maximize the impact of Easter weekend.
Mm, that's good. Those 6 things right there. I mean, that's from the start to the finish. You can do all these things, get people there on Easter and have an awesome service and have them feeling super inspired and then go celebrate. But that's really the starting point, isn't it? That's really an opportunity right there when you get people. And so I'm so glad you went into that back half there because I think oftentimes we can miss that, like, okay, we don't just want people to come for Easter and we don't just want them to be inspired. We want to help take them by the hand and lead them into what it means to be a disciple, lead them into what it means to be connected to what we've gotten to experience, to what's changed our life. And so that's really good.
So you want to hear what inspired that list of 6? I
Yeah.
went to a Pee Wee football game with one of our staff members. His son was playing, and the
Uh-huh.
quarterback dropped back and they sacked him and he fumbled. Okay.
Okay.
So they started celebrating the sack. They watched these guys on NFL. They started, doing all their gyrations. Meanwhile, another kid on the offense picked up the ball and he ran the whole way into the end zone. And I was laughing so hard because basically they were celebrating half a great play.
Yeah,
And as I was
exactly.
driving home, I thought, that's pretty much what I do at Easter. I celebrate half a good play. We had people bring people, we had people, we had a good service. But I've learned that if I don't do the rest of it, if I don't do those little nudges towards our community, we don't grow during Easter as much as we would have.
Yeah, that's good. Really good. Really good. Well, do you have anything else you want to share before we jump into questions? I know
Well,
we're
let's jump into the questions. Sounds good.
all right. All right. We're right on time. I have a couple questions here that I think will be a good way to end today's webinar. And we've talked about some of this already, but it says, can you tell us a little bit about how you program your Easter services? What are the important factors that you consider?
Yeah, I think we've talked about some of them, and I think that list of that we just gave probably
Yeah.
hits that a lot. But I would say make sure that you're thinking broad enough,
Yeah.
Like for me, even on Palm Sunday, when I was a Catholic kid, I'd always get a little palm branch, right? And I would take it home and I would put it in my room and it reminded me of something special. Now I would chase my sister around the house with her, with it too and take swats at her. But we start on Palm Sunday and we give kids a palm branch just like that because it just puts in their mind this is a really, really special time of year. So I think every little thing that you do just to make sure that it doesn't just feel like another Sunday, I think it's important. And
Hmm.
and if you have a good program and if you start the invitation thing, even those who watch other people bring members, when the church was small, I remember this. I remember there'd be people who looked and man, that person brought members and I didn't. And it really served as a catalyst and a motivator to get people to bring members.
Mm, that's good. A couple of things that come to
Guys,
mind.
Mike, on the production side, I'd be curious to hear, do you find more motivation or do people uh, I know early our arts people would be so motivated because they were doing things for the first time in the city. But is it
Yeah.
hard to motivate people? Is it easier to motivate them to do more?
Um, I think um that's a good question. I mean, obviously society seems to have gotten busier and busier, so you have to have a really good temperature on where you're at with your volunteer base. Because like you said, you can definitely get to a point where try to do these great things, but you get on the other side of it and you've created as many problems as you have benefits if you don't lead well. So I think knowing your team, knowing, communicating well, but then good vision casting, all that stuff really goes into it. For us, we have worked to have depth. We've worked to have, you know, different things. And so our guys get excited about producing something that, because we know we have the opportunity to win a lot of people for Jesus. We have the opportunity, there's so much opportunity there that we love getting to do it. Plus you get to, give your best at your craft. So for the most part, yeah, I mean, it's more of an opportunity than anything, but a lot of that comes to being sensitive to the Holy Spirit, sensitive to, your team and just knowing your team well, and then communicating and leading well. So, a couple of things that come to my mind about the programming. One, you said be broad enough. Easter is definitely a time that you want to make sure in your programming, you acknowledge and remember that you have people who aren't in church all the time. So I think it's cool to address that and to lay things out in a way where they feel welcome and they feel included and they feel like you thought about them. Another thing we've done, Dad, is Easter isn't like, we don't do our musical dramas at Easter. Easter is not so wildly different from church
No, if
service.
we do it Palm Sunday. If we ever
Right.
do a big thing like that, we do it Palm Sunday, and then they're thinking, oh, let's go back there on Easter. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Easter's ramped up a little bit, and we'll share a testimony, and we do things in Easter that are special, but it's also a church service because we want people to know what church feels like. We don't want them to come to something that's not what we do, and then they come back the next week expecting one thing. So we do a lot of the creativity. We do it in Easter, but a lot of the programming is within the lines of pretty similar to what we do on a Sunday, just ramped up in some ways. So
Yeah, we don't go
here's
long. We don't like to go long on Easter either, because people have a lot of family plans. So a
yeah,
lot of times as a pastor, I feel like I'm saying the creative team. I know you think that's going to be so cool and you want to do this, but less is more at Easter. We don't want to go too long. We want to
yeah,
make it powerful. We don't want to go too long.
yeah, yep. The second question is, I love the idea of a culture of invitation. Do you have any more advice on how you've built that?
Just consistency. I mean,
Yeah,
we know that we're going to do in the course of a year 8 to 10 series, and every time we do a series, we do what we're doing here at Easter. We ramp it up at Easter, obviously, because of we do a little more production at Easter, and we do community outreach things around Easter, leading up to Easter, to try to build a stronger culture of invitation at Easter. But the truth is, Tommy Barnett used to say there's 52 big Sundays a year.
yeah,
And so to me, we have 8 or 10 big series a year, and we monitor it. And we can talk about it in another webinar. But the things I monitor are how many guests a year, how many of those come to Christ, how many of those get into next steps, how many of those end up getting on a dream team. And again, if your church is losing 33%, you got to stay aggressive on those things to win.
right, right. That's good. Yeah, I can vouch for that because I've been here a long time. It's not just one motivational moment at offering that builds it. It's consistency, building it into the DNA of who you are, the way you operate, putting opportunities for people all the time to invite people. And yeah, it's just been consistency.
Yeah, it's
That's
good.
good.
Well, I think that wraps it up, guys. So have a great weekend. Next webinar, we're going to talk about 5 things you can just do year round that cause your visitor flow to grow. And they'll be like today was just like the 20,000-foot view. We're going to get very specific about just some specific practical ways that we can increase visitor flow. And Easter's such a great time to do that. But we appreciate all you do. Have an incredible weekend, and we'll be praying for you.
God bless, guys.